Welcome to the Rural Recharge Podcast. I'm your host, Jeb Smith, president of the Florida Farm Bureau Federation. The Rural Recharge is a guided conversation that allows you to cut through the noise and multitude of information out there. You should be able to trust your sources, which is why we're a platform that comes straight from the source of farmers and ranchers that grow what we eat, wear, and use every day. Our guest today joining us is Mr. Jake Pendergrass, the Class 10 Young Farmer and Ranchers President for Florida Farm Bureau Federation. Jake grew up on his family's cow-calf operation in northern Alabama and moved to Florida when he was just 12 years old. He spent his teenage years helping on the family's citrus grove in Zolfo Springs, which would lead Jake to get his degree in citrus and horticultural sciences from Florida Southern College. And Jake, we're here at the YF&R convention here in St. Augustine, Florida. It's good to catch up with you. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Jeb. Great to be here. I appreciate the opportunity. So kind of fun. I told Mr. James the other day, he's like, "You ever done a podcast?" I was like, "Yeah, but probably not like this one." So I was like, it'll be fun. So I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for being here at the YF&R conference. It's a pleasure to have you and the support for YF&R. Really appreciate it.
Give us a little background on YF&R and how many folks are here.
So I think we had about 275 registered, so 275 young agriculturalists from around the state of Florida come and, learn more about Farm Bureau advocacy standpoint, what, young farmers and ranchers do, commingle, get to meet each other. It's a really good opportunity. We have some ag companies here that really pours into a lot of hearts and minds of young people. So, like I said, great learning opportunity for folks to come around and, learn something.
You got folks from all over the state, diversity of ages. It's really neat. I mean, I've seen little ones all the way up to older ones too. Tell us a little bit about YF&R. What is age range?
Yes, sir. So YF&R, which young farmers and ranchers, a lot of the states around the country have a YF&R within their, Farm Bureau organization or federation. And but YF&R is ages 18 to 35. So if you fall into that category, that qualifies you as a young farmer, gives you that opportunity to be a part of that kind of a classification in Farm Bureau. It takes you a lot of different places. There's a lot of people that bring young ones around to these conferences. Obviously, 18 to 35 is a kind of a wide age range. You go from 18 to 20, you think you know something. You go from 20 to 25, then you realize you didn't know anything. And then all of a sudden you get married and start having kids. Not that far in age gap, but it's a big life change for a lot of people. I mean, you'll see one person show up one year like, "Hey, how's it going?" Next year they show up, "Well, I've got like a kid now." And it's just like, wow, life moves fast.
Well, talking about moving fast, even with your group, I mean, it's interesting to watch, even since y'all started now, to see how many were single now are couples and now how many were couples now have kids. It's just, even in 2 years, that's a huge thing.
Oh, I know. Which when we started YF&R, the leadership group, I think it was Matt Gonzalez, one of the former past presidents of the leadership group, came in and it's like, "Well, you're either going to be married." So he's like, YF&R is responsible for either marriage or babies. He's like, "So we'll see which one happens here." And so we've had, I think, 3 babies. Well, 2 so far, 3. My wife, Miranda, is expecting in September. So there'll be 3 babies at that point.
Well, congratulations. Exciting.
Yeah.
It's neat to see, and truly it is, Jake, to watch and watch all the young people around. You said from 18 to 35, and there's a lot that happens in between 18. You've got college-age kids to, families, but it's neat to see, especially the little ones. There are a lot of little ones here, even within the leadership group, Class 10. I mean, I think last night with the youngest here was 6 weeks old. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Shout out to Gabe Smoke, one of my buddies from Highlands County. He brought little Henry all the way up here. And I was like, "Man, good on you." I was like, I don't know if I could have done that. But and his wife, Cammie, she's great. So.
But, it's neat because that's the way I was raised, just coming to these same things and being here. My dad brought me, we brought our children. And interesting, last night, I sit there and look out over that audience. I have four of my children are here and 2 grandkids are here. And it's a really neat opportunity for everybody to meet and to grow. I mean, because there's some growth that comes with it. There is a wonderful networking opportunity at YF&R.
Well, it's a great starting point too. I mean, obviously, getting out of high school, going into college, not everybody does go to college. Sometimes they go straight into working on the family farm. So it's a good educational starting point for a lot of people. It's a good learning experience. And from the standpoint of bringing kids, it's great because it starts to teach kids at a young age that you need to be involved, whether that be in a Farm Bureau or some other, advocacy organization. You need to be involved. And that starts from a young age because, I mean, and there are some people that wake up, one morning and say, oh, I need to be involved. But if, you show kids the right way to go, they won't depart from it when they're older. So I think, starting kids coming, letting them run around, have a great time with other kids, blesses my heart to see kids coming in and enjoying the time. So,
Well, it's a family atmosphere. There's no doubt about it. And that's special. But it's special to have you as the class president. Tell us a little bit about your background. I mentioned a little bit of it. Your family came down from Alabama to Florida. Tell us a little bit how that worked and a little bit about yourself and your background.
yeah. So currently, I'm 27 years old, married to Miranda. We've been together since high school. Her dad owns a irrigation business in town, so we've used him quite over the years, and so I kind of knew Miranda in and out from that, and just going to school. So, but yeah, we got married 3 years ago. But I work for Farm Credit full time. I'm on the lending side, so I'm a farm lender, commercial ag, and residential. And you kind of try to meet everybody's fancies. And then on the side, we farm. My family does citrus in Zolfo Springs. We've kind of growing everything under the sun a little bit when it comes to citrus. We got navels, grapefruit, hamlins, Valencias, limes, pomelos. A lot of people don't know what pomelos are until they see how big that thing is like that. And then they're, oh, I remember what that is. So, and then we also do cattle. I'm kind of more involved in cattle. It's more of my passion. We do red Angus cattle and South Pole cattle. So that's a little bit kind of the backstory on that. But yeah, we kind of a long story, I guess. How does somebody from North Alabama end up in Florida? I get that question a lot. My dad and family, I mean, we're all from Alabama, been there for years, and came down. My dad had a feed supply store for about 35 years. My parents currently are a little bit older. They got married older, but my dad had a feed supply store for about 35 years, a feed mill, a registered Centipole cattle operation, as well as some Hereford stuff going on up there. Had about 400 head. And then had the feed supply store, married my mom back in 95. She's from Birmingham, so she was city girl coming onto the farm life. Yeah, she still doesn't really quite understand sometimes what all we're going through, even today. And she's just like, man, I just can't. It's hard to grasp kind of what all goes into farming and agriculture. But still have the family farm in Alabama. But we moved down here when I was 12, back in '09, 10. Obviously, everybody knows economic crisis back then. My dad had the store. We went through a terrible drought in Alabama. My uncle at the time, Carlos Bailey, he had bought, I think in early 2000, bought a lot of citrus groves down here. He had actually spent his couple summers of his summers and through the winters as in his youth, actually in Lakeland. From North Alabama, came to Lakeland to pick fruit after he got out of the Vietnam War to pay his way through college. Along with the GI Bill, he went to the University of Alabama. Roll Tide. He came down, started picking, fell in love with Central Florida, stayed in Alabama, and still lives there currently. But he came down, bought some groves in about the early 2000s. So kind of fast forward to 2008, 2009, 10, business farm supply store wasn't doing so hot anymore. You have starting to have a venture into the big chains, Tractor Supply,
Right.
Rural King, all that stuff. So drought hit hard. So my uncle was like, well, you ever thought about moving to Florida? No, I ain't thought about moving to Florida. So my dad came down a couple of times, saw the operation. My uncle was more of a numbers man. My dad was more of a kind of hard work, nitty gritty, grit your teeth kind of a guy. So told my mom we're moving to Florida. Yeah, I didn't go over too well with her still. She still talks about moving back to Alabama sometimes, but I'm like, nope, our home's here now. Moved down, left the farm up there. We still currently farm up there. Moved down here, got kind of settled into the citrus industry. That was before greening, and was really starting to make a show for it. So I think everything looked good. Prices were halfway decent. People were still making really good money at Citrus. Seemed like a great opportunity. Still is a great opportunity. I mean, it's afforded a lot of things for my family. And so moved down here, got settled in that. Dad went at that time, he was 55, goes from living his entire life in North Alabama and then down here, completely different job avenue and completely different growing space, which, like I said, family's always been involved in ag, but just complete 180. That's what led me here and, kind of got in touch with the local community, stayed involved, and that's what's led me here to Farm Bureau.
Well, you're in Farm Bureau here, but your dad actually had some he was in Farm Bureau in Alabama as well, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he was involved in Alpha, which is Alabama Farmers Federation. He was involved in Alpha, county vice president for many, many years, was on their Young Farmers and Ranchers back in the 80s, served on the state board as president of the Young Farmers and Ranchers back then. So when we moved down here, I mean, obviously he is known the Florida Farm Bureau. He was he obviously became members as soon as we came down here, and he still actually holds his Alpha membership in Alabama still. So double dipping a little bit, I guess you could say. But he kind of encouraged me after high school. He's like, you should start looking in the Farm Bureau. He's like, I'm not going to tell you what to do. He's like, you've been in FFA. He's like, you've been in all these different, groups in high school. He's like, just go check it out. So great buddy of mine, a familiar friend, Kalen Royal. He a little bit older than me, but he came up to me after high school and said, "Hey, what you doing on Tuesday night?" I was like, "I don't know, probably working. I don't know." Coming back home, I was like, "We're spraying." I was like, rust mites are bad where I was spraying. I was like, well, "Come to the meeting first and you can go back out and spray." I'm like, what's this meeting? He's like, "Well, your dad told you about Farm Bureau." I was like, "Yeah, but what is that?" And so he's like, "Well, just come on." So at the time, we had a YFNR meeting, Hardy County. Good group of us still involved in the county. A lot of them aged out at this point. But yeah, got me involved. Kalen said, "Come on to a meeting." So showed up, didn't know what to expect, found some camaraderie there and stayed plugged in. All thanks to my dad. He just has a love for ag, a love for advocacy along with it. And, just Farm Bureau has played a big role in his life, made a lot of friends at Alpha, still holds those friends today.
Absolutely.
One of his friends he lives in Montgomery County, and his wife Kathy is actually was the women's chair, and she's the county president now in Alpha, one of the counties there, and they talk every day. I mean, they'll blow each other's phones up. So it's cool to see how those friendships and kind of the attachments and kind of transcends over time, state lines and everything. Farm Bureau, like you said earlier, it's all one big family. So I'm deeply grateful for it.
It is. It's one big family from coast to coast because we're all like-minded, and it's a small network of when you truly get into agriculture. So tell us a little bit about you got involved in Young Farmers and Ranchers in Hardy County, and then Kalen invited you to be involved, and then you ended up joining the class. And tell us a little bit about your experience with Class 10 and how y'all work together.
Well, it's been an interesting path to get to Class 10. So started out Hardy County, went to college at Florida Southern. There's not a collegiate Farm Bureau there, but if you're familiar with the heartland of Florida, Lakeland, that's where Florida Southern is. It's not too far from Wauchula. Hardy County's Zolfo Springs area. So every chance I got, if we had a free day, and we had a YFNR meeting, I'd come back, go to the YFNR meeting, go back to school or something. Tried to be involved as much as I could over the 2 years I was at college at Florida Southern. So when I graduated, I actually took a job as a citrus production manager for Heller Brothers in Fort Pierce. And so kind of got busy with that, fell out a little bit of a loop with YFNR, kind of kept up with some folks, stayed over there for about 3 years. St. Lucie, they do have a YFNR, but I wasn't really plugged into that. I was trying to, focus on my career at the point, and nobody really had approached me, which, when you're trying to focus in on an avenue, kind of get narrow focused on that, and especially out of college, you're young. So got married during that time, switched jobs over, came back to work at the family farm for a little bit, then kind of got plugged back into Highlands County, YFNR, a lot of the Hardy County guys at that point had aged out. A buddy of mine, Lane Dom, whose mother serves on the state board with us, Miss Danielle, he was like, hey, man, why don't you come over to Highlands County YFNR? I'm like, well, I got a Hardy County membership. I was like, I don't think that'll work. He's like, don't worry about it. Come on. So I was like, all right, sounds good. So I started going to Highlands meetings. And that was, I think, probably 2022, started back up with YFNR, fell back in love with YFNR. Really what we were trying to do there, spent a couple of years just going to meetings. And then they asked me, it's like, hey, you want to, be our treasurer? So I was like, yeah, I'll try it. I'm terrible at finances, but I guess we'll try to hold down a treasurer spot. So,
you work on the lending side at Farm Credit too.
We have Excel spreadsheets. Just kidding. But, and that goes into segue, I guess, with Farm Credit. So shout out Farm Credit to show me how to do math. But got in the treasurer spot. I had started working for a family friend after that, Gary Henderson over at Classic Caladium. So outstanding guy, great individual. He had served on the county board, and his brother is actually the Hardy County president now, Scott Henderson. But started working for him on the Caladiums. Spent about a year and a half there, in and out, working with YFNR. And then Andy Nyhofer, our district field rep, said, hey, have you ever thought about applying for the leadership group? And, I've came to YFNR conferences since, I think, 2017. So I'd have been 19, I think, at that point. And I was like, well, I know what the leadership group is, from a high level, from the outside looking in, they kind of plan conferences or whatever and travel around the state, learn a little bit more about Farm Bureau. He's like, well, you should think about doing it. And I'm like, I ain't really got time for that. Well, no time like the present. You ain't got no kids. He's like, you and Miranda just hanging out. I was like, well, maybe we'll try it. We'll see. I thought about it for a little bit, and I was like, I really don't have time for it. He's like, no, you need to do it. So I put in my application, talk about last minute, went to the YFNR conference in Orlando. I was like, well, let me talk to a few folks. I knew some people at the past leadership group at the time. I knew some folks on there. I said, well, let me go to the conference this weekend because the applications was due next Friday. And I was like, I'll talk to some people. Talking to a few folks, they were like, you really need to do it. So on Thursday of the following week, I spent 8 hours and submitted my application at 11:57. And I was like, well, this is going to look really good for the selection process. This guy's turning in something really last minute. Got Scott Henderson. I was like, hey, I'm applying. He's like, sounds great. I was like, I need a letter of recommendation from the board. So if you are applying, make sure you get those letters from your board. But he signed off on it, sent Michelle Kurtz an email, who was at the time the leadership's program coordinator at 12:01 Friday morning, said, hey, I just submitted my application a little last minute. And she's like, who are you? It's because she hadn't heard of me at that point. And so all is well and good. Was blessed to be able to be selected to serve on the leadership group, Class 10. But so far, it's been, a really blessing to be on this group. Made a lot of great friends, a lot of good connections. The growth that I've been able to see on some of our leadership group's members from this leadership group, the class sessions and everything, the growth for just personal skills, leadership skills. I mean, it's East and the West. I mean, it's very good. What Farm Bureau pours into the leadership group as far as, even monetary value and just time. It's really appreciated. And it's grown a lot of members. It's grown us to be successful advocates. The leadership group is meant to develop us into the next county board members, county presidents, state board directors, and even state president. Jeb, I know you were on the YFNR leadership group, and look at you. Now you're state president. So it's, even elected officials. There's been a lot of people go through the program that are now elected officials in the state of Florida, outside of the state of Florida. So it's a great program, and just honored to be a part of that and kind of see everybody's leadership development from that standpoint. And, I never thought I'd be serving on a state board of directors for anything, much less Florida Farm Bureau. And at that, being class president has afforded me that opportunity. And just seeing how a political organization such as us, an advocacy organization, operates. It's, if you're going to be involved in ag, you got to be on boots on the ground and learn how all this on the back end, how your policy gets enacted from a county to a state level. And being part of the leadership group, really gives you a high level picture of that, an in-depth look. Some of the counties, it's you learn from your state board or county board members of what y'all are doing. in the county. But sometimes if you're not on that board just yet, or YF&R, you don't really know exactly what all Farm Bureau does in the counties. But that's what the leadership groups afforded, and your YF&R, if your county has one, it affords you that opportunity to start looking from a high level view and really get you involved.
Tell us a little why should what would be your pitch to young people today? I mean, we've got a lot here that aren't necessarily engaged in YF&R, Young Farmers and Ranchers program. But what's your pitch as being the president of Class 10? What is your pitch to them to get involved?
It's hard. And I realize it, it doesn't get any easier as you get older, obviously. So you have to, first off, a servant's heart, I think, is key. And I think a lot of people have developed that over time. Some people are born with a servant's heart. Some people aren't. It's developed into you over time if you haven't been born with that. But, if you're going to be an ag, nobody speaks for farmers except for farmers.
Right.
And obviously we have, Florida Farm Bureau, we have Florida Fruit and Veg, we have the Cattlemen's Association, but who makes up those organizations? Farmers and ranchers. So if you're going to be an ag, even from a allied member, from working with a chemical company, working from, farm credit, a lending side, even a research like an IFAS, you have to be involved because you're going to be promoting those people that you serve or what you're currently doing as in your farming operation. So it doesn't matter what spectrum you fall on, whether that's, as being a service-minded person, helping farmers out with crop recommendations, or, lending side, stuff like that, research, or you are the farmer. Somebody has to advocate. And without that, we're in trouble. Farmers are in trouble. We've seen kind of the leaps and bounds that people try to undermine farming and ranching as far as, farming practices, sometimes they try to paint us as this big bad monster, but who are the stewards of the land? Who's keeping these green spaces? Who's keeping Florida green? Cows do. That's a shout out to Pat Durden, past cattlemen's president. He beat that one into my head. Those are the people taking that strive. So young people, may not start out realizing that. And once you start getting into, these conversations, you overhear people, oh, this about ag. Well, that starts developing in you into that advocacy part. That's why you need to be involved. Florida Farm Bureau gives you those tools to be successful, to be able to control that narrative from a certain point of view. We are, the buck stops here with ag. We are that line, and we are the stewards. We're the conservationists. We are the people that grow food, that we're the ones that supply the nation. Without Florida farmers, without American farmers, where are we as a country? That's a national security risk. You start talking to these things to young people, they start recognizing that. It's like, oh, this is really a serious deal. We need to be involved. And so that's my pitch to young folks, is that once you start, take that first step. You're not going to know what to say if you've also never been involved in ag. If you didn't grow up on a family farm and you went into high school and you were an FFA and, somebody said, hey, join FFA. Well, I'm a city kid. I don't know nothing about FFA. Well, that starts giving you the tools to be successful, starts giving you that insight into ag. I can't tell you how many times I was younger at FFA convention. I'd heard a state officers like, I came from a non-farming family. And look where we are now. A lot of them are leaders in ag. So it's that first little step. And YF&R after FFA, YF&R is a great stop, to get involved. It's kind of that after FFA. And it's more of a deeper dive into what you can be, what Florida Farm Bureau can be, and develop yourself into that leader. And so, like I said, it just takes that first little step. Then you fall in. And that's my pitch, is just be involved. You just can't do everything. Pick and choose what you can do. Obviously, if you're starting a family, you got to sometimes say no, but you also have to realize what makes that wheel spin, what greases the wheel. And that's usually advocacy from a standpoint of Florida Farm Bureau, Cattlemen's, or Florida Fruit and Veg. There's a lot of organizations out there, but, I love to think that we're the glue that holds it all together. Florida Farm Bureau is, and taking that step, that's the first step in getting young people involved. Once you do that, it's all hands on deck.
Jake, you did an outstanding job of presenting the why young people, that pitch of why they should be involved in YF&R program with Florida Farm Bureau. Tell us how they can get involved in.
Yeah. So getting involved in YF&R I mean, it's pretty simple. Some counties don't have a YF&R. And, if you've heard of YF&R, if you come to a conference and you're wanting to start a YF&R, you just go to your county board, go to your county president. If you don't know who that is, just ask around, or you can go on the Florida Farm Bureau website. It'll say who your county president is. They got contact information. Hit them up. Tell them that you're interested in getting a YF&R started. I know they'll be supportive of it because as young agriculturalists, we're the next generation. We're the ones that's going to be taking over, either the family farm, starting a new farm as a first generation, or supporting the farm by lending, by crop, insurance, crop nutrition, anywhere down that line. You're that next step. So get involved in YF&R. Like I said, if your county doesn't have one, get one started. If you can't get one started, there's probably a neighboring county that has one. So you can go to it. Like I said earlier in the podcast, if you're from Hardy County and your membership's Hardy County, that doesn't mean you can't go get involved into another county YF&R. Get started, and then take the skills that you've learned from there. Maybe go back to your own county and then start your own county YF&R. The process is easy, but taking that step to get the process started is sometimes a hindrance. But that's how you get involved. Get a YF&R started. Learn those centers of influence in your county. Learn who your county board members are. You can find out very easily. And like I said, I know it's a big step for some to do that. And that's what, if you take that step, that puts you in a position of leadership. People respect that.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. And you've had an opportunity. You've gotten a lot through YF&R, especially leadership group. You've been exposed to a lot of things statewide. I love coming to this conference because it provides a tremendous amount of energy and enthusiasm for the future of agriculture. There's no doubt about that. But as you've engaged with folks around the state and nation at this point, Jake, from your group to at American Farm Bureau as well, what is and even here at this conference right now, this weekend, what is your perspective or what do you sense from young people in regard to the future of agriculture?
The future of agriculture is what this generation wants it to be. It defines it. There's a lot of people my age, that want to get into ag that may not be in it yet, or they want to take over a family farm or start their own operation. And it's kind of a catch-22. You sit back and look at it. The climate for farming right now is not very good. I mean, high labor costs, high input costs. You have to want this. I mean, you have to want it in your bones to do these kind of things. And I think as a society, people are more and more detached from farming and agricultural society. There starts to become that yearning again to want to reconnect with that. And I see that, especially a lot with younger folks, maybe their parents. If you go talk to somebody, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to somebody. It's like, oh, what's your parents do? Oh, they work this. But my granddaddy was a farmer, and I kind of want to get back into that. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that. And so there's that want to, and there's a want to try to get back into farming. I see it from young folks all the time. And sometimes they don't have that tools to get started necessarily to jump back in. So they get started on a smaller level. But I think traveling around, doing American Farm Bureau stuff, Florida Farm Bureau stuff, I've met a lot of guys from across and girls from across the country, and that want to is there. It's there. There are some roadblocks, and getting over those roadblocks, it's a challenge. But I think our generation has a strong will, and I think that'll kind of push us over the edge. I think we'll start getting more people involved back into farming, and I don't know at scale. Obviously, we all can't have these huge operations anymore. The family farm is disappearing, but with our generation, I think we can recontrol that narrative and people will start farming again, have an emphasis on family because they see what kind of a lifestyle that affords. Like I said earlier, it's not easy. Input costs, land costs, equipment costs, all of it. But once you see your, family grow up on that piece of land that you bought and you started farming, watch your kids get out there playing in the dirt. That people want that. And I think that reconnect with the soil, with, faith, God, that's where a lot of people find peace, even though it, like I said, it's a struggle. And so I think there's a good opportunity for folks to get back into it. There's a lot of older generation retiring. Now, being able to get into those spaces, it's hard. Going up to an older guy, being like, "Hey, can I at least come work from you on the weekends? Can we work something out maybe on trying to purchase some of this property later on down the road to start an operation?" But I think people need to come from a realization is that, and social media, I think is it's painted a great picture, and it's also painted a false picture for what your expectations are. We can't all start out with 1,000 acres or 500 acres. You have to work your way up. Now, some people are afforded that opportunity, and great on them, and I hope they take it and run with it and show what can be done. But a lot of people have to start from the bottom, and a lot of bottoms look different for other people. But like I said earlier, that want is there. I hope people don't get discouraged, because land prices, development in the state of Florida right now is rampant. I mean, you see it everywhere. You see it here right now in St. Johns County. You see it in Hardy County, where I'm from, especially in Manatee, which is the county next to it. You see that encroachment starting to come over. So, and land prices are high, and a lot of farmers and ranchers, that's, a lot of their retirement. So being able to present your ideas as a young agriculturalist of why you want to be in ag, and being able to secure a piece of property, or, even rent something, to get started. It's a big pitch, but I think farmers, and ranchers across the state, they have that mutual respect. They know that drive. And when they see it from a young farmer and rancher, I think they'll, be supportive in every way they can, help them get started. And I think the future is bright if we take control. That is, if young people take control of their destiny, put in, the work, the want to, they can secure it. And I think it will be great, but they have to do that.
Last night I gave a statistic, Jake, and it was that they're out of the country's producers, over 220,000 actually have young farmers are making decisions on those farms, which is, if you just take and divide that by 50, that's 4,400 decision makers per state in the country involved in making day-to-day operational decisions. That's a lot of young people involved in this industry. Although it only comprises about 9% of the total farm population, it's still very encouraging to see that there are some that are engaged in this business. You're right, it takes drive. But I can tell you what, there is a room full of drive here in this conference here in St. Augustine, Florida this weekend, and you're leading it, and I think there's a lot of enthusiasm. I can tell you what, it makes me excited about agriculture. It kind of is rejuvenating when I come in and get around young people, because there is, you talk about that will, it is very present here. And I just think it's exciting to be able to help to encourage young people to be involved. Yes, it's hard. It is not an easy business to engage in, but I don't know if it's necessarily ever been real easy.
No, it's not real easy. I mean, my family's full-time farmers, but I'm not full-time on the farm. My dad wanted me to work for other people, get experience elsewhere. I've been working now for Farm Credit for 2 years. And then kind of going a little bit back, but how I got started in ag, my dad didn't give me anything. He's like, you need to figure it out on your own. Obviously, he's helped me tremendously. But he's like, you need to figure it out. Well, citrus isn't doing so hot, so I'm not working for the family farm. We don't know where that's going to end up. There's a lot of promising things coming out of research, but as we all know with research, that could sometimes be a dead-end street. Right. Could be a cul-de-sac, turn right back around, go down. And I have a passion for ag, and I just can't sit on the sidelines. So Farm Credit offered me a job. That's a great opportunity to, step in, help young farmers and ranchers get started, even support the older generation too as they continue. But segueing into that, it's allowed me to start my own operation on the side. Back in high school in FFA, I started back up a little bit, and it just kind of gives some perspective to young folks. So when I was in FFA, when we moved back down here to Florida, we didn't have any cattle down here. We just did strictly citrus. And so got into high school. Didn't really think too much about cows. Been removed from it for a few years at that point. And buddies were showing steers. I'm like, why don't you get you a steer? I was like, I ain't messing with that stuff. I was like, we're on citrus. I was like, we're farming on. He's like, well, I ain't got time for cattle. And so we start down that road and we'll go to the fair. Everybody's having fun, fitting steers, showing them in the ring. And I'm like, that kind of sounds a little bit fun. My dad's like, well, I think you should get one next year. So I got one next year, had a lot of fun with it. Got into that kind of an aspect and showed my first steer as a sophomore in high school. Then junior year started showing heifers. My dad's like, why don't you get you a couple heifers? We had 20 acres behind the house that we had bought when we moved to Florida. He's like, need something back there anyways, instead of just mowing grass all the time. So I knew where he was going. He was trying to push me in that direction of cattle again. He missed it, and he missed it tremendously. So got a couple heifers, showed the heifers in the fair. Next year, he's like, why don't you get you a bull? Show a bull in the fair. He's like, you can keep it. He's like, that steer, he's like, you ain't really making no money off of him anyway. He's showing them. You're just learning good work ethic. I'm like, all right, we'll get a bull. Bought a Brangus bull from actually a fruit buyer of my dad's up in Alturas. He had a registered Brangus operation. Bought a bull from him, bred the heifers, showed bred heifers in a bull that year in the fair, and just started from there. All of a sudden, they had calves. Oh, I got, three, now 3 cows and a couple calves and a bull. Well, what are you going to do with them? I don't know. Figure it out. Well, you can take them down there to the stockyard, sell them. Well, we don't have a trailer. I was like, yeah, we do. He drives up to Alabama. He had his old stock trailer from 1970 sitting under the barn up there. Grabs a stock trailer, comes back. I loaded him up, 12-hour drive back from Alabama. I had to replace a couple wheels. Threw him on the trailer. Took him down to Arcadia Stockyard, sold him. A couple years go by, get into college. Got 20 at this point. Just started keeping heifers. Like, starting to really get into this, son. I'm like, I think you pushed me in this direction. I don't some backdoor dealing going on here. So started falling in love with cattle. That was turned into my passion is cows. So now I've got over 100 head of mama cows just buying and selling and replacing. A lot of them are Red Angus cross and South Pole cross, which a lot of people don't really know what South Pole is. That's a breed actually started by the bass guitarist Teddy Gentry with the group Alabama. Everybody knows Dixieland Delight. And so my dad was actually good friends with Teddy when they had the feed store up there. They're from Fort Payne, and so are we. And so they did a lot of trading, selling feed back in the day. Called Teddy, said, hey, Jake needs another bull. So I was like, okay, well, I got this bull, worked great on heifers. It's a South Pole bull. What is a South Pole bull? It's a 4-way cross, Red Angus, a Hereford, a Barzona, and a Centipole. Basically, it's a mutt, but it's a pretty red cow for sure. And they got their, they got their little space in the market, but started throwing those on some big Brangus cows that I had gotten, started getting some really quality, little red heifers and some red steers. And the thing about South Poles is that they're really fertile. I mean, they're great mama cows. They're in full size, usually about 1,000 to 1,100 pounds. Some people think they're dwarfs. But when you put them up to a tiger striped F1, yeah, they look like a dwarf. But they're really fertile cows, very docile, great disposition on them. So started keeping back heifers off those and, kind of got to where I'm at now with 100 head of mama cows. Got some leased land from some older couples down the street, kind of presented my idea to them like, hey, I really want to get into cattle. So allowed me the opportunity, and that's kind of goes back to what I said a little bit earlier, is take that step with some of the older folks down the street. Sometimes they don't want to sell to developers. They want to get somebody involved in ag, and, I was afforded that opportunity. And, now with the citrus industry the way it is, I've pushed up some grove land, going to lease it from some folks and get my buddy Cole Robertson plant some Gibbs tuck grass for me and start running some cattle on that too and continue to get bigger. But that whole point is that sometimes you start from the bottom, you get to a point and you'll have to work a full-time job. I mean, you just can't dive right off into ag if you're not already involved in it. You gotta those long days and long nights. Miranda can attest to it. She helps me with cattle. She's a nurse practitioner now. She's about to pass her boards for that. And she's been a labor and delivery nurse for 4 years. And so helps me when she's not working, move cows around, rotate pastures. And she's very involved in it. And, my dad helps from time to time as he can with citrus and getting out of the office and the spray tractor sometimes. And so, but you got to have that good support group. If you don't have that good support group, that be with your wife, kids, you got to have it. You got to have it, and you got to have that backing, that support of, I think we should do that. I think we really should.
It sounds like you've had tremendous support from your dad pushing you into it, I hear. And then you've got support of your wife, you've got support of your neighbors, and you've got support of Florida Farm Bureau. It works hand in glove. Jake, if there was one last thing you want to leave with the listeners, what would that be?
I think overall, it kind of goes back to what we were saying. Just get involved. You don't have to serve in a leadership position, but just showing up. When you show up to things, that's your voice, being heard. Your voice is tremendous, and you don't have to be very vocal, but you just being there physically, that is a voice that shows strength in numbers. Just get involved. Get involved with your county farm bureau. If you don't want to be involved in Farm Bureau, get involved with cattlemen's, get involved with FFVA, get involved in something. That is a springboard to develop you personally with whatever organization. Be involved in all three. There's more than just three in the state of Florida, but those are the kind of the main ones. Find you a niche one to get involved with, but you just need to be involved. If you take that step, as we mentioned earlier, just doing something, that creates that voice. And that's what my challenge is to the listeners out there. If you're not involved in some sort of advocacy for agriculture, please, our industry does depend on, people being involved. Because if we're not, then people else are going to write that narrative for us, not the farmers.
Well, you've heard the encouragement from Jake Pendergrass, President of Class 10 of Florida Farm Bureau's Y&R group. You've heard it. Get involved. And Jake, thank you for spending some time with us. We hope that y'all have a great and wonderful convention here in St. Augustine, Florida, and wish you the very, very best. And if anybody has any questions of how to get involved, please don't hesitate to contact me or contact Jake, and we'll be glad to help y'all to further your experience within the agricultural industry and be able to help advocate on behalf of our farmers and ranchers to increase the net income of farmers and ranchers and to improve the quality of rural life. Thank you, Jake.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you so much for supporting the Rural Recharge podcast. We hope that you are enjoying these conversations brought to you by farmers for your benefit. While you're here, please consider giving us a rating or a review. It really does help us to continue to share the stories of our Florida farm families and the important impact they have on your community. Thank you, and have a great day.